All right, so get ready because today we are going deep on mineral crushing operators.
Oh, yeah,
These are the folks who take like giant rocks and turn them into the stuff we use every single day, right? Roads, buildings, all that.
exactly. It all starts with those operators.
And I gotta say, these RoleCatcher excerpts, they've got me seriously intrigued by this whole career path.
Yeah, you're right to be. We don't always think about where those materials come from, but someone's got to do it.
Okay, so for those of us who don't spend a lot of time around quarries, break it down.
Hmm.
What does a mineral crushing operator actually do? Am I picturing like someone just pushing buttons on huge machines all day?
Well, there's definitely some button pushing involved,
Right.
but it's honestly way more dynamic than you might think. You're basically orchestrating this whole flow of raw materials, making sure the right stuff gets fed into these powerful crushers. We're talking jaw crushers, cone crushers, the big guys,
Mhm.
and then you're monitoring their performance, analyzing the data to make sure the final product is the right size and quality.
Wait, data analysis. Hold on, so there's serious brain power involved in this too? It's not just about brawn?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. A single crusher, if it's not calibrated right, can mess up the entire production line. Think of the time and money that would cost. These operators, they're analyzing particle size, troubleshooting any feed issues, making adjustments in real time. It's way more intellectually engaging than a lot of people probably realize.
Wow, okay, I'm already getting a whole new appreciation for this, but let's be real, it can't all be glamorous. What are some of the tough parts of this job?
Well, yeah, you're going to be around dust and noise. That's a given. And you'll be on your feet a lot, working with heavy machinery. So safety is critical, obviously. One wrong move could be bad news.
Right, of course.
But what's interesting is that the Role Catcher Guide points out how this focus on safety is actually a huge plus for the right kind of person. Well, think about it. The people who really excel in this kind of environment, they're meticulous, detail-oriented, and they stay calm under pressure. And those are valuable traits no matter what you do, but especially when safety is paramount.
That makes a lot of sense. So you've got to be okay with physical work, you need a knack for machinery, and you got to thrive in a fast-paced environment, potentially high pressure too. But okay, let's say someone is up for that challenge. What's the career path look like? Can you work your way out, like start at an entry-level position and go from there?
Absolutely. And RoleCatcher does a great job of laying out that progression from entry level all the way up to senior operator. They even have these example profiles for each stage, which I think is really helpful.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it lets you actually picture yourself at different points in your career, which is super cool.
Okay, I'm hooked. Walk us through it. What does a brand new entry-level mineral crushing operator actually do?
Think of it like a hands-on apprenticeship. You're shadowing the more experienced operators, learning how to use the machinery, but under close supervision, of course. You'd be moving materials around, getting a feel for how the whole crushing process works, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's all about those fundamentals.
Exactly. Building that solid foundation.
You learn the ropes, you prove yourself, and then you move up the ladder. What's the next rung?
So that's when you step into the role of junior mineral crushing operator. And this is where you really start to, flex your muscles,
Literally.
literally and figuratively. You're operating the crushers more independently now. You're monitoring that all-important material flow and making those real-time adjustments we talked about.
And I bet that's where the whole data analysis part really comes in, right?
Exactly. Remember those poorly calibrated crushers we talked about? A junior operator is using data to make sure that doesn't happen. They're the ones making sure everything is running smoothly, becoming experts at spotting any inconsistencies, and just making that crushing process as efficient as possible. So yeah, it's a hands-on job, but with that brain power bonus.
Okay, seriously, this is way more involved than I ever would guessed. You need mechanical skills, problem solving, and now you're telling me data analysis is crucial too. What happens when you get even more experience under your belt?
That's where things get even more interesting. You'd move up to the intermediate mineral crushing operator level, and this is where leadership starts to come into play.
Leadership, huh? Tell me more about that.
So at this level, you might find yourself supervising a small team of operators, which means you're not only responsible for your own work, but for guiding and mentoring others. You're delegating tasks, making sure everyone's meeting those production goals, and of course, troubleshooting any issues that pop up.
You're like the captain of the crushing crew, keeping those minerals flowing. But I imagine the troubleshooting gets even more complex at this point, right?
Oh, for sure. It's not just about a jam conveyor belt anymore.
Yeah.
Now you're dealing with these bigger picture problems, analyzing trends in the data, maybe even training those junior operators on the best practices for the job. It's definitely a demanding role. It takes a special mix of technical know-how and leadership to really succeed.
We've gone from assisting with basic tasks to leading a team and making decisions that impact the entire operation. This is amazing. What's the pinnacle, the top of the mountain for someone in this field?
For those who really rise to the top, who have that strategic mindset, the ultimate goal is becoming a senior mineral crushing operator. At that point, you're not just managing a single team, you're overseeing the entire crushing operation.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting to me. What does a senior operator do that's different from everything else we've talked about?
Imagine being the conductor of an orchestra, right?
Mhm.
Except your instruments are these massive crushers, and the music you're making is perfectly sized aggregate material. You're basically setting the strategic direction for the entire operation. Long-term planning, budgeting, allocating resources, and you got to stay ahead of the curve on all the latest industry trends.
Wow, so it's a huge responsibility. You're not just crushing rocks, you're crushing it in terms of your career.
Exactly. It really shows you how far you can go in this field if you're dedicated and you never stop learning. But hold on, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before you can even get to that interview for an entry-level position, there's a whole set of skills you've got to have.
Okay, so this isn't like your grandpa's factory job, you know? To really make it as a mineral crushing operator, it sounds like you need a good mix of hands-on skills, tech savvy, and even leadership qualities. For someone just starting out, what are those must-have skills they should be focusing on?
Well, you got to start with mechanical aptitude. That's a no-brainer. You're going to be around complex machinery all day long, so understanding how it works, how to maintain it, how to troubleshoot when things go wrong, that's absolutely essential.
So, like, if someone's always tinkering in the garage, rebuilding an engine or something, that's a good sign.
Absolutely. That kind of thing shows you're mechanically inclined. But it goes beyond just knowing how to use a wrench. Remember, as you move up in your career, you're not just going to be responsible for the machines themselves. You'll be managing teams, talking to other departments, maybe even training new hires.
So soft skills are important too.
Oh, big time. Being able to communicate clearly and effectively, that's crucial, especially when you get into those leadership positions. Doesn't matter if you're explaining something complex to a junior operator or presenting data to the higher-ups,
Yeah.
communication is key.
And speaking of data, RoleCatcher mentioned this trend toward automation, how digitization is changing the industry. How does that factor into the skills a mineral crushing operator needs to be successful these days?
It's huge. We're seeing more and more of these really sophisticated technologies being used in crushing operations. Like, imagine AI-powered crushers that adjust their own settings based on what's happening in real time with the data.
No kidding. Okay, so it's not just about muscle anymore. You need the mental agility to keep up with all this new technology too.
Exactly. The mineral crushing operator of the future, they're going to need to be comfortable with technology. They got to know how to analyze data, and they have to adapt to these new software systems and everything. It's all about working with these high-tech machines to be as efficient and productive as possible.
Mineral Crushing Operator 2.0. But, okay, before we go full sci-fi on this, let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. For our listeners who are thinking, hey, this sounds like a career I want to pursue, what are some common interview questions they should be prepared for? It sounds like RoleCatcher gave us some good insider info on that.
They did. And some of these questions are really designed to see how much you actually know, how much experience you have. For example, they might ask about your experience with specific types of crushers, like jaw crushers or comb crushers.
Right, right.
And they don't just want you to rattle off names. They want you to show them you really understand how those machines work, what they're good at, what their limitations are, maybe talk about any challenges you've run into while using them.
So you can't just be like, oh yeah, I've used a jaw crusher. You got to go deeper than that.
Exactly. Show them. You're not just a button pusher, you're an expert. Now, another big one, obviously, is safety. Always a top priority in this line of work.
Of course.
So be ready to answer questions about safety procedures, how you identify and deal with risks, what you do if there was an emergency.
They're looking for someone who's proactive, not just following the rules, but actually thinking about how to be as safe as possible, right?
Exactly. That's what they want to see. They'll also want to know about your problem-solving skills. So be prepared to talk about a time you had an issue with a crusher, or maybe the crushing process itself. How did you figure out what was wrong? What did you do to fix it? What was the end result?
So you have to be able to think on your feet and come up with solutions, especially under pressure.
For sure. And don't be afraid to talk about what you learned from the experience, even if it didn't go perfectly. Employers respect that it shows self-awareness.
It means you're not just trying to be right all the time, but you're willing to learn from your mistakes and get better.
Now, another big one is preventative maintenance. This shows you get how important it is to keep those machines in top shape.
So it's not just about fixing it when it breaks, it's about preventing problems before they even happen.
Exactly. Being proactive, that's key. They want to know you have that mindset. And they might also ask about conveyor systems, your experience with those.
Because those are crucial for moving all that material around, right?
Yep. You got to know how they work and what to do if they act up. And depending on the company and the specific role, they might even ask about your experience with mobile crushing equipment.
Ah, that's where the travel opportunities could come in.
Right. Some mineral crushing operators get to travel to different work sites, different projects. So if you like a change of scenery and new challenges, that could be a big perk.
Shows you're adaptable too, which is always a good thing.
One last thing I want to mention, and RoleCatcher brought this up too, is environmental regulations. That's something you'll definitely want to be prepared to discuss.
Makes sense. That's becoming more and more important in every industry these days.
Absolutely. So be ready to talk about things like dust suppression, waste disposal, all those environmental factors. They want to know you're a responsible operator.
So it's more than just the technical stuff. You got to be aware of the bigger picture, how your work impacts the environment.
Exactly. Showing that you're environmentally conscious, that can really give you an edge in an interview.
It's really cool to see how much emphasis they put on environmental responsibility.
It is.
Shows you this industry's thinking about the bigger picture, sustainability and all that.
Absolutely. Like you said, it goes beyond just the technical stuff. It's about being a responsible operator.
Okay, so before we wrap up our little mineral crushing operator deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, which is all the automation that's happening in this industry. Those AI-powered crushers are pretty wild, but it also makes you wonder, what happens to the human element in all this?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? It's tough
Yeah.
to predict the future, but we could look at where things are headed.
So put on your futurologist hat for a minute. What do you see happening?
Well, one thing's for sure, those AI crushers and all that new tech, that's not going away.
Right.
And as they get even more advanced, the role of the operator is going to change too. It has to.
So will the machines eventually just replace human operators entirely?
I wouldn't say replace, but transform, definitely.
Mm.
Imagine a really high-tech crushing plant, right?
Mm.
Where most of the routine work is all done by machines. You don't really need an operator standing there pushing buttons at that point.
You need someone who can program the machines, make sense of all the data they're spitting out, fix the problems the automation can't handle on its own.
Exactly. The mineral crushing operator of the future, they're going to be like a data analyst, a systems engineer, maybe even doing some programming, someone who's tech savvy and can adapt to whatever's next.
So it's not man versus machine, it's man with machine.
Exactly. The people who can roll with those punches, who are always learning new skills and adapting, that's who's going to thrive in this line of work.
It sounds like an awesome opportunity for anyone who loves tech, who's a good problem solver, and isn't afraid to break a sweat on the job.
Totally. And don't forget, this is a career that's going to be around for a long time.
How so?
Think about it. As long as we need roads, buildings, infrastructure, all that, we're going to need mineral crushing operators. Someone's got to get those raw materials ready.
That is a reassuring thought. So for anyone listening who's feeling inspired, who's maybe thinking about trading in their desk job for a hard hat and a chance to work with some seriously awesome equipment, what's the first step?
Well, RoleCatcher is a great place to start. Their guide was super helpful for us in putting this whole deep dive together, and I know it would be for anyone looking into this career.
Couldn't agree more. They've got tons of great insights into the industry, the skills you need, even potential interview questions. Definitely check them out.
And, beyond the practical advice and all that, the thing I find really exciting about this career path is the impact it has. You're not just crushing rocks, you're helping to build the world around us.
That's a pretty cool way to look at it. So to all the aspiring mineral crushing operators out there, I say go for it.
Yeah. Embrace the challenge, learn all you can, and never stop crushing it, literally and figuratively.
Happy crushing, everyone.
And to all our listeners, keep those deep dive requests coming. We'll be back next time with another one.
See you then.